What a great segue, Michael, into your next section, which is a panel session. So could I get Darrell, Nick and Libby to return to the stage and Walton to come up to the stage. So this panel session is about, surprise, surprise, creating world-class experiences. And during the session, we'll look to unpack the key elements that make up world-class experiences. We'll seek answers from our expert panel on how operators can plan and execute the delivery of such experiences, ensuring that their product remains vital and relevant. I'll be asking a series of questions that ideally we'll have a chance to throw to the floor and get some questions off you guys as well. Just as everybody's coming up, I will introduce Anne Walton. Anne is the team leader, visitor experience. Take a seat, guys, come through. Anne is the team leader, visitor experience, North Coast branch of New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service. She's been team leader, visitor experience for the branch for the past 7 years. Prior to this, was a park ranger for 20 years. And this really comes across with Anne. Got to know her over the years about her passion for the industry. You might want to give that back to Jim. And so the role of Team Leader Visitor Experience is a broad and exciting role with the honour of working with committed teams at Sea Acres Rainforest Centre and Dorrigo Rainforest Centre, the Ranger Guided Program, tourism partners and stakeholders, and to work on visitor facilities across the North Coast for multi-day walks, campgrounds, picnic areas to new visitor centres. The Dorrigo project is one such major visitor infrastructure project that Anne has been involved with since its inception. So following that intro, and because we haven't heard from Anne yet, I'm going to kick off with Anne. Where's my question here? So Anne, National Parks have announced the creation of a brand new ARC Rainforest Centre in Dorrigo, which will feature a spectacular elevated walkway and lookout to offer accessible and exceptional experiences for visitors. Can you outline what led to the decision to upgrade this facility and how the product has been designed to cater for evolving customer expectations? No.
Hold it closer.
There you go.
That's it. I just didn't want to blast everyone, which I can do. Yeah, look, the reasoning behind the new facility in Dorrigo, and if anyone is not aware of it, please have a look on the website and look up Dorrigo Great Escarpment Walk, and you will get all of the imagery that you had showed before, Michael. I sort of noticed that, thank you. Yeah, look, I've been based in the Dorrigo Rainforest Centre for about 10 years now, and just working in that environment, we've noticed that the numbers of visitors was stagnant. We were also finding that people were walking away from Dorrigo, which is a World Heritage Rainforest, and they were walking away with no appreciation or acknowledgement that they've just been in one of the most incredible places that they could visit. And we just went, look, we're not hitting the mark. The skywalk isn't enthralling people enough. And one of the big barriers to people getting down into the rainforest and spending time and connecting with nature was a really steep ramp going down from the Rainforest Centre to the walking track network. And accessibility is really, really important to allow everybody to connect with nature. So, National Parks' role is to provide access and immersive experiences to give visitors the opportunity to connect with nature and with, in Dorrigo's case, Gumbaynggirr culture, and to do this safely. To achieve this, compelling and innovative infrastructure is required. It is therefore with these needs in mind that the current design for the Dorrigo ARC is offering both an outdoor and all-weather lookout within a circular designed accessible boardwalk that spirals down onto the forest floor. This links to walking tracks, lookout platforms and art sculptures, yay! that encourage visitors to slow down and notice the smaller details of the rainforest with a sense of discovery and adventure. This will all be accessed through a new rainforest-focused visitor centre, that is welcoming and provides space for interpretive displays, yarning circles, guided activities, and of course a fantastic starting point for the Dorrigo Escarpment Walk, as well as a cafe and retail offering. So that's the Dorrigo Art Project and why it's being delivered. Why we got the money?
Thank you, Anne. It is, if you haven't seen it online, that picture in my presentation, those big circular arcs, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The centre there, it is going to be absolutely world class and a real driver of visitation to our area. So I encourage anyone to get online and have a look at it. The rest of the questions I'll throw to all the panel, and you can all choose to answer how you want. Going back to my product management days and marketing days, a quote that always sticks in my head when it comes to designing experiences. You know, people will forget what you show them, they'll forget what you tell them, but they'll remember how you make them feel. How do you guys integrate that methodology into your product design?
All right. Well, I've got the mic. Look, the way we see it is that interpretation is the key in connecting with park visitors. The ultimate interpretive experience is a guided experience, which I think we've all behind today. And this is where our education ranges engage visitors to touch, smell, be shocked, be delighted, be special, and be curious. We also provide interpretive elements in parks using art, sculpture, signage and installations in our visitor centres, as well as having engaged and passionate staff that share their energy and knowledge, and just watching the wonder, awe and excitement of children taking part in one of our nature play programs, that they absolutely blow their minds over fungi. And that was the last program I saw. It was just amazing. It is gold. That is how we engage with our visitors and inspire emotional responses.
Look, I think I would very much agree with that. I think it's again, the enablement to have people to have connections. And sometimes those connections are between people, the provision of games, the provision of spaces to fires, to toast marshmallows over. It's those moments of connections that I think that goes into part of it. The other side is perhaps sort of upstream from that, is with your team yourself. One of the things that we put into place was a walk in their shoes program, whereby every single member of base camp, which is what you would traditionally refer to as head office, was charged with the fact they had to go and spend 2 days in a park. And they had to spend time with in amenities, cleaning, they had to spend time out on grounds, guest services, all of those things to get an appreciation of that. Once they have that appreciation, two things happen. One, the connection between us and the people that work in the parks grows. And second, their ideas about how to connect grows. So that's just two different ways that we looked at it.
I've done a lot of travel over the years, but I'm actually a pretty awful tourist in that sense, and I have a love-hate relationship with the tour guide. And I think one of the reasons I hate tour guides is because too often they just regurgitate facts like they're reading a Wikipedia page, and it is just dead fucking boring. I hate it with a passion. Flip side of that, a really great guide is a person who puts you in the destination and really brings home that sense of place. And we often tell the story in Intrepid, and we've got about a couple thousand guides working for us, so know a little bit about it. But one guide leader, as we tend to call them, in Istanbul, who's telling the story, and he's standing outside the Blue Mosque in the Hippodrome, but he doesn't talk about history as such, although there's history everywhere. He starts the story talking about his mum and about how he actually lived just over there on the Golden Horn, about 500 metres away, and one day his mum told him off because he was playing soccer in the Hippodrome where Roman chariots used to run around and all the rest of it. And he put himself in the story with his mum and his local culture, and he brought the history of what we're seeing to absolute life, and everyone was with him every step of the way. We still got our history lesson, but we got it in a way that was really engaging and really personal. And I think that's what it's kind of all about. It's bringing reality and it's bringing life to the storytelling.
That's art, Darrell.
Call it whatever you like, Libby.
And I guess obviously from Norpa's perspective and art, full stop, it is all about storytelling. And that is why I think artists and those art experiences are so important, because they enable us to see ourselves up on stage, to hear those authentic stories that might be historical. We've got My Cousin Frank coming up the end of this month up in Norpa, which is the story of the first Aboriginal Olympian being told by Rhoda Roberts, who is Francis Roberts, the first Aboriginal Olympian boxer, niece. She's telling that story and the richness of that story and his life, and bringing that to life. And we've got national interest of that story, because people want to hear stories of place, and they want to hear stories about who we are, so that we can make sense of our world. I think that's what the arts does, and I think that's our absolute secret weapon, I guess, for helping people feel and really love experiences like the arts experiences.
Thank you, guys. Some really powerful themes coming through there, I think. That personal, authentic versus the repetitive and robotic, which a lot of tourism becomes, is so important. And then the last two answers there, touching on the storytelling, the power and the importance of effective storytelling. I hear so many times you get these great analogies or whatever, but they're just not delivered in a compelling way. And the personalisation of it, or however you do it, it's such an important aspect about how we deliver our product and our experiences. It's one thing to have a great idea, or to think you've got a great idea. How do you guys stress test those ideas? How do you do some fact finding and some sense checking to make sure that they are fit to market or they will resonate?
Okay. Because actually it's a really important part of the art making process. I mean, whose story is it to tell? I think that's always something really important, especially when in the First Nations space, and that's something we just need to be more and more aware of, is whose story are we telling and how are we telling it? So that fact checking is incredibly important. So I guess from our perspective, Norpa, who sits quite embedded in the community, we spend a lot of time researching stories, and then perhaps taking the sentiment or the tone of that story and elevating it so that it's more of a global story, which resonates more globally rather than individually. But I think knowing whose story it is to tell and why we're telling that story, I think is one of the most important things to start with.
I think one of the things that we do, and we do a lot of testing, we're big fans of innovation and trying to create things. And I always sort of go out with the fact is don't bet the farm, bet the pig. Try small. And we do a lot of those things whereby we'll build something into it. And we've got a North Star Park, which we're doing with all of the technologies that we want to look at to help enable experiences. And there's one park we're throwing stuff at it. And in the same way as we're doing with the amenities block, we're taking one to do that. So I think find something, test it, trial it out, get everyone to use it, and then make sure you've got a diversity of people, because one of those things that you can suffer from is, this is a bloody brilliant idea, I came up with it. And then before you know what, actually goes shit. So it's making sure that you've got a lot of people around that test it and become part of it. And we've got a group of park managers that we go to and we say, okay, you test this, you try it, come back, give us your feedback on the hypothesis.
I think storytelling is not really for the organisation to do, it's for the individual to do. And so it's a lot of it is about delegation to that individual, to that leader in Istanbul or wherever they are. But what it it is for the organisation to do is to review that process and to monitor and evaluate it, and so we can tell very clearly through client feedback who is good and who is not so good at storytelling, and so measurement is critical to the process. So we don't drive the process, but we do measure the process and monitor it. That's utterly critical in the evaluation process.
Yeah, likewise, empowering staff to absolutely engage on their genuine story and their genuine interests and their power of storytelling. And we also have that feedback and survey and review, and we're looking at how, they're meeting the needs of the visitors through the feedback. And yeah, we absolutely use the research that from the data that we collect. So it's fairly robust, and we know we're on the right track.
Thanks, guys. It again touches on that hardware versus software analogy that Darrell kicked off with today, isn't it? It's really getting that hardware right to enable the software to flourish, and that's such a key ingredient in the balance of things, which I keep finding quite fascinating today. I'll ask one more question, then we'll open it to the floor. So get your thinking caps on, people. Are there any specific areas that you feel that the North Coast of New South Wales or regional Australia more generally could focus on to deliver differentiated or world-class experiences to really kind of help us stand out?
Oh, Adam. I think certainly the North Coast. I think it was touched on before, Michael, when you said community. I think we've got incredible wildlife interaction opportunities or viewing opportunities, a bit like Lord Howe. We have incredible wild nature on the North Coast, which is an absolute, big winner for the North Coast and not always accessible in other regions. We've got vibrant, engaged and absolutely passionate communities, and I think that's what makes the North Coast particularly special.
I'm certainly no expert on this region of the world, so I won't pretend to be so. What I will say, though, is just from our global experience, is that things come from the bottom up, not from the top down. And so if you can encourage the regional tourism, be it firms, individuals, government bodies or whatever, to really take an entrepreneurial approach and a bottom-up approach to really stimulate, you'll be surprised when it comes to the top. The other thing I'd say is that I'm not aware of a true iconic thing, with the possible exception of Lord Howe Island, but in this region, that's actually a really useful thing, because too often an icon becomes almost a negative legacy for a region, because everything is going around it. And I reckon Indian tourism really suffers from having the Taj Mahal. It gets a lot of people to India, but actually it really restricts people's thinking. We take 15, 20,000 people a year to India. Before they go, most of them say they want to go and see the Taj Mahal. When we serve them and when they come back, hardly any of them mention the Taj Mahal. I'm not saying the Taj Mahal is bad, but I'm just saying it's that diversity of attraction and the things that people don't expect that is the thing that actually inspires and engages and tells their friends about it.
The Northern Rivers is one of the hotspots in Australia for professional creatives and creative workforce. A lot of them live there but might have international careers or national careers. But there's this incredible collection of creative minds that live in the Northern Rivers, and I think if we can tap into that, I think we could have a really interesting array of different types of experiences that then connects into that really rich diversity of characteristics that you have in those different villages. I'm thinking especially the Northern Rivers where we are, and again I think it is about that grassroots up. If you've got those really authentic experiences, connected with really talented and skilled and visionary thinkers behind them, we can come up with things that are really distinct. I love that word, but it is something that, you know, it really spells out experiences that sit apart because they are from the ground up.
Talk about experiences and sort of tapping into a couple of those themes. I think one of the things up here that is super and could be built out even further is this network of micro events, micro festivals that happens every week across the region. From farmers markets to art competitions to walking trails, there are a plethora of these things that people want to find and connect with. And it doesn't have to be dark mofo. I mean, nice as it can be. But you can just have a farmer's market or something that people can go and see, because you know what they love most? They love the connection point. They love hearing the story of the provenance of the food or what's being made, how it's come to be there. That's their moment of connection with place. That's their moment, and that's their storytelling bit when they come back and they say, look, you couldn't believe this. We met Bob and Emma who were telling us about this, and they started this plantation, they started doing this, and they grew this, etc., etc. And it's those stories that need to be connected. So working with the destination networks to try and elevate those events and festivals, and it doesn't matter how small they are, is a really great way of being able to tell stories and get people to this region because it has so much to offer.
Thanks again for some great insight. So we've got some questions from the floor.
This one's for you, Michael, Anne and Nick. I hear all these great ideas about a walking trail up and down the east coast of this region. And I heard about walking trails in the national parks, and I heard about walking trails, guided walks in the Reflections Holiday Park. Where's the word cycling in that? Because where you can walk, you can cycle. Wouldn't it be great to have a cycle trail up and down the east coast of Australia, connecting all the Reflection Holiday Parks through the national parks? Wouldn't that be a great asset?
I'll start. I love that ambition. No, I think that sounds amazing. We can't always do it dual usage, and the scale of what we're looking at for the Great North Coast Trail probably would be financially forbidding to do it, and the land tenure wouldn't allow it. But I think with Northern Rivers Rail Trail and the kind of level of interest and desire that that's generated, I've been talking to other bodies around the North Coast who also want to do rail trails. It's really demonstrated the commercial appeal. And that's just one style. I know there's gravel, there's off-road, there's mountain biking at Jolly Nose. We've got so many great experiences here. But yeah, we'll absolutely endorse that ambition.
So, I agree. I think that both walking and cycling perform an important point. We're working down with the Human Hobble Trail, which is sort of 670 odd kilometres now. Very few people, as been mentioned before, will ever do the whole thing. What I think is really good is you take sections of it, make them special in and of themselves, and provide services for people to go and camp. So I think guided camp trail walking, where people can go along and have camps set up on the trails for them, is a great way for the future. I think with cycling, we're doing something, trying to build a downhill mountain bike track at Lake Glenbourne at the moment, and we're building a cycle path around that. So I think there's a lot of connected points, and I do like the idea of connections. The only thing I'd say for anybody that's designing or implementing, putting these things together, is, the way you eat an elephant is with the first bite. So find sections, don't try and do everything, and then just sort of model and promote the heck out of it, because there is so much good walking to be done here, and as I said, I think the time is now, the zeitgeist is around it.
Yeah, a good point about the cycling. Certainly there's opportunities of cycling in National Park, and the extension of those is certainly under consideration. Again, I think partnerships are a really key area here, where you have trails that are on state forests. They need to also be linked with national parks so that there's a seamless connection between land tenures, and I think that is an area that we don't do very well, and we need to work a lot closer. I'm thinking that, as Michael suggested, mentioned before about the Great Koala National Park. You know, in some of those areas there would be cycling that goes on there. That would certainly is going to be a recreational use that would be supported going forward. So yeah, I think there's certainly opportunity for more cycling opportunities across tenure, definitely.
Can I just say something vaguely relevant? Just be careful you don't sell yourself short. When you say not everyone's going to do this long walk, probably one of the most popular long distance walks in the world is the Camino Santiago, which is 880 kilometres. It takes 28, 29 days to walk. 450,000 people do it a year. Now, sure, there's a few hundred years of history, but you can build to these things, and you'd be surprised what people want to do, particularly when the natural attractions are as strong as this area.
Yeah, good point. Any other
And
questions?
they do it on bikes and foot.
One question, I've got one question. Anyone?
All right.
Sorry, I've been told it's a quick one. I guess it could go a long way, but I'll get you to keep your answers short so we don't get in trouble. How do you base the traditional values and things that come with our communities and move them forward in a manner that is inclusive and forward-thinking and keep it balanced for all of those that have been involved in the past and start to include more in the future?
I'll start because no one else is going to. I think values is something you should never attempt to change. Values is something a community or a project or whatever it is has to reflect. And so if you tap into community values and establish what they are, and then you use that as a springboard to go to your next step in terms of saying, well, this is what we want to do, and you've got to make sure that you're actually in line with community values, not trying to say, this is what our values should be. You're hiding to nothing to do that.
Yeah, I think if you run counter to values, you're not going to get a partnership. And a lot's been spoken about partnerships and community, and we sort of fervently believe that. But really, the first thing to do is to understand what that is, which involves a great deal of listening and community consultation, which is a hard thing to do. Let me tell you, it's not a bloody easy thing, and often you run up against it. And I can mention 55 different stories that are going on at the moment with some of those things. But it is about listening, and then it is gently talking about what you're going to be. So, light touch.
I guess from a national parks perspective, it's we look at the core values of national parks, which is conservation of both culture and heritage and nature. And from that viewpoint, it's certainly working with community and all of our stakeholders and getting a shared vision of the way we can progress. So we work very strongly with Aboriginal communities as well as all of our partners and neighbours. And our visitors. So again, it is not easy work pleasing everyone and trying to get the right balance, and I don't think we do on occasion. And it's about just being open and listening.
It's an interesting one. I think the arts is a place for difficult conversations, and we take that role quite seriously. I think we do, NORPA particularly has such a groundswell of support, are very strong. We are part of the cultural DNA of the Northern Rivers, and I mean that by, we've got incredible history, 30 years of making theatre in that place for the community who are really bold and brave in terms of the adventures that they go on with our theatre making. So we do need to take responsibility and make sure that we're having really good conversations, but also allowing topics and you know, to be raised in those conversations that allow our community to have the conversations, the difficult conversations that I think sometimes we need to have. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And just a very quick comment I'll add to that. Since being in this role, this is a topic that comes up with us quite a lot, and it is quite a challenging area, particularly with Aboriginal groups. And I've asked many of those groups, well, what's the best way forward? Because it can often feel a little bit intimidating, and they all say the same thing: just start the conversation. Just make the approach. They're going to be much more receptive to the fact that if they're not the right person, they'll be receptive that you ask the question. And it's always a good place to start. So I just want to give a massive thank you to our panellists.